from Stephen Mary's. Praying one day Big Red will win the NIT.
Ham is the water of meats.
Ham the water of meats.
Ham is the water of meats.
No more need for
Ham is the
bacon.
water of meats. Ham is the water of meats. Ham is the water of meats.
Ham the water of meats.
Welcome back. John, Josh, and Stibbs with you here on 1620 The Zone, and joining us from his basement in Lincoln. We have Lincoln on the left, if you're watching on Stibbs TV, Omaha on the right. It's Jack Mitchell of our sister station KLIN, who spent the weekend installing toilets, which sounds like a thrill a minute.
It went, I tweeted out about 9:30 when I knew I was going to do it, 9:30 in the morning. We had to finish the flooring first, which I was kind of an assistant on. My wife and son kind of headed that up. I said, I know I'm going to install a toilet at some point today, and there's almost no way it's going to go well. And I was right. It's so predictable. I don't know if there's a point, like I don't know how many of you guys had dads who are super handy at stuff. And I don't know how, John, you're probably pretty handy at stuff. Maybe not. So, boy, that's
you and I have the same issues. You might be like 100 level coursework, and I might be like 150. I mean, I'm not
really. I thought you were way better than that, John.
Okay, I spent a lot more time putting in those doorknobs this weekend than I expected because I had the damn thing turned around the wrong way.
Your wife said that on Facebook. I felt better after I saw that. But I don't know about you guys as dads, but like my dad was. I mean, he built houses when he was a teenager and stuff. I mean, he was like a doctorate level on this stuff, and it feels like everyone's dad was. And like, what I wonder is, did they ever have this like years long period of suckiness that we all have at this stuff, or did they
long? How about like my whole life? You'd think at some point you'd get better at it, and it never gets better.
That's what I thought. Maybe I will not have just an idiotic screw up on every step of the entire process for once. I believe that for a while on Saturday afternoon. And then about 10 minutes in, when I dropped the nut into the little hole that the toilet is supposed to be fastened onto, and I had to get my wife's tweezers to try and fish it out like the worst game of Operation ever, I was losing my mind. I said, I'm never going to do it. I'm just never going to be good at this. We can wish it. My family can wish it. I can wish it. I can shame myself, but it's never going to happen.
I figured a weekend when you drop a nut in a hole would be a good weekend, but sadly it was not for Jack Mitchell.
Drop a nut in a hole and try and fish it out with tweezers. And then on my show this morning, Kellen from my show was like, why didn't you just get a magnet? And I was like, oh, yeah, that would have been really smart.
Right, but that would have been another trip to the store, because how many people have magnets in their house?
I got no magnet.
One off the fridge. I don't know, I'll take the old
I guess you could have pulled one of those.
I got a football schedule magnet that isn't getting used much. Maybe that thing would pull it up. Good for something.
Jack's got the home real estate 1999 Nebraska football schedule draped down the hole of the toilet trying to pull a freaking nut out.
Miss on September 20th.
Jack, the best part too is I went and found your thread, and it literally is like that article. It's a meme come to life of, and this set off a 12-tweet Twitter thread from Jack Mitchell of KLIN.
Oh my God.
At some point, were you just willing to just cut a giant hole in the floor and say, you know what? If it's good enough for the pioneers and our Native Americans from from many centuries ago, if they can crap in a hole, you can crap in a hole.
I know that's a little bit of hyperbole, but that's basically what happened. I mean, this thing is constructed to 80% accuracy, I would say. Is it 100% level? No. Is that going to kill anyone? No, it hasn't flooded yet. Are all of the screws completely tightened? Not really. But listen, I'm just thinking what the biggest impact is the little baseboard behind it nailed in with tacks like it should be. No, it's just kind of pushed in there and stuck. I think the only people who are going to know about this are people like 3 decades from now when they tear apart that bathroom. Like, man, what a terrible job the guy before us did. But it won't matter then.
So Greg wants to know real quick on the comments. Please tell me you bought your wife new tweezers.
I did wash. I don't know. She's got a lot of tweezers.
Yeah,
so
she's fine.
Probably a good idea. I probably should. I think I washed them or something.
Stibbs and I don't own anything.
Bathroom remodel, everything is gross at this point.
I never thought that I'd consider myself a handyman, but after listening to you guys, I feel like I could do anything. I've never had that much trouble with every step of like putting together something. I've put together like exercise bikes and real bikes.
Oh, there are things that do go that do go as planned. But like, listen, putting in a toilet when I saw that you were going to do this, I was fully expecting to see the mushroom cloud come up over East Lincoln on Saturday.
For some reason, the plumbing stuff, like I put together, my daughter got this huge loft bed from IKEA, and it took me a long time. And
their instructions are so brutal because it's not in English.
Right. I had screw ups along the way.
Oh, imagine that. Josh having a problem with instructions that aren't in English.
I would like to see you put something together, John, if the instructions aren't in English.
That took me like a full week of nights in October. But the plumbing stuff and the toilet, just with the terrible angles that you're trying to reach these screws and trying to get the socket underneath the thing with your left hand. I mean, it's bad. That's the worst.
You have a socket extender?
Yeah, and then you got to have your hand up on the top and hold the thing and then do this. And then you forget which way is tightened. And you're like, you have to stop and think, okay, lefty, righty, whatever. It's terrible.
So are you already like planning what you're going to do next weekend? Like, that's the thing I always wonder about all you people that actually have to do things to your houses over the weekend. Like, do you already start planning?
So my wife thinks I can tear down our deck and build a new deck this summer.
Oh my God.
Whoa. Whoa.
We should get her down on this because it's a funny conversation. But she's like, we need a new deck. She's like, you and Johnny have the time to figure out how to do this. You should be able to. And if you guys are going to be home the whole summer, right? And he's not going to be able to work a whole lot because there aren't many jobs out here. You guys are going to figure this out, get someone to draw you a plan and do it. I'm like, and then I'm screaming at the toilet on Saturday night and I see, do you see this? Can you imagine multiplying this for an entire summer and thousands of dollars?
Listen, I did a deck once, but I was only the helper. My father-in-law was the one who drew up the plans from scratch and did that whole thing. And I'm like, listen, I can, you tell me where to put the nail, I'll put the nail. You tell me where to drill the hole, I'll drill the hole. But
I'll get the stuff out of the
get all the
toolbox.
measurements right and the cuts and everything, forget about it.
Yeah, go get me the Allen wrench. What's an Allen wrench? Okay, I mean, that's what I'm good at, basically.
Is it the flat screwdriver or the one with the cross? Which one of those do you need?
Phillips, this is the one with the cross.
I know that they're flatheads and Phillips
I know.
screwdrivers, John.
Well, I'm glad you clarified that.
That's all I know.
I'm glad you clarified. Let's see. Steve wants to know which hat Jack is wearing. I think you've got MAGA Herbie, right?
Old school.
Of course, yeah. Why would you have new Herbie? New Herbie sucks.
Yeah,
I'm generally against new Herbie, although I got a mask made for me that has new Herbie on it, and no old Herbie was available, so I generally don't like new Herbie, and I wish they would take it out of the complete rotation. Let the trademark expire, get rid of it. I can't stand the graphic.
Then it's a perfect segue, because we're going to do a question earlier on. So you've been in these meetings. I know, because I've been in these meetings with you, where we're sitting in the conference room and they cater in the lunch and they open up the big whiteboard and they get the markers out. And it's like, okay, kids, let's talk about goals. Let's talk about goals and let's talk about strategies, right? So we were actually talking about this on Friday. If we were going to sit down and do a whiteboard exercise on Nebraska football today, what word or phrase would you use that best describes the current state of Nebraska football?
What word
or phrases would you use
for aspirational?
No. To describe it today. We're not looking at goals yet. The first thing is to identify who we are and where we are right now.
I mean, I'm brutally honest, I think I would say something like stuck in a rut. Stuck in a rut is the first thing that comes to mind.
That's fair.
No, I mean, and it seems like a lot of the responses, I haven't read all of them, John, but it seems like a lot of them are along those lines of like spinning their wheels, stuck in a rut, can't just get over that hump. And it's funny too that we're asking this question because Sam McEwen had an interesting story over the weekend about the Colorado loss. And it seems like the number that did on the team last year. And you read all these quotes from guys like Lamar Jackson and Muhammad Berry. And I mean, it's like all the superlatives that we have said about this program and how they mentally are not as strong as they need to be. It seems like all of them are true, which is, like that they're like, yeah, we need to win this game. And this game is going to put us on the right path. Well, we didn't win this game and then it put us on the wrong path.
Okay, that's annoying because there's a game like that every year. It seems like now, right? There's that one game and that really took it out of them. Why do we? Okay, we've got to get used to losing that game by now and being able to bounce back from it. And there's always one of those games at the beginning of the year, and it's always just a gut-wrenching loss. and then it takes it out of them for the year. You've got to be able to bounce back from that moment.
Yeah, the weird thing
I made that point with Chris Heddy a couple weeks ago. I said, because it was that game. It was getting the rained out against Akron.
Yes.
And you look at those things, it's like,
USC.
I get how if you're in an emotionally fragile setting, or if you're young and inexperienced, how one sideways or backward step can cause you to go down a spiral. But it seems like these things have been happening. It's not just exclusive to Scott Frost. It's something that's been happening inside this program for, it seems like, forever, where it's like this one thing happened and it blew everything up. And on the other side of the ledger, you look at a game like like the run Nebraska had in 2012. They needed to win 6 in a row. And they won 6 in a row. And a couple of times they had to come back and do it, like the game at Michigan State. And you would think something like that would be like this launching pad, this springboard to greater success. But no, it turns in, coming up on the other side, it just it blows up in your face. And it just makes you wonder, how do you get out of, you talk about getting out of ruts, you wonder how you get out of that rut of letting one bad thing or one bad game turn into 3 bad things or 3 bad games.
I start to believe the only way that you do it is you have early season success in a game where you go above expectations by winning a game you maybe shouldn't, but it's got to be early, because let's face it, I'll talk for myself, I become that way as a fan, and I think some of that seeps into the program to some degree. I as a fan, I sit down, and as soon as something goes wrong anymore, I'm like, here we go again at this point. I mean, it's that Nebraska basketball mentality that you had for years before this. You assume I've been on I've seen this before. It's Groundhog Day. Once again, I think they've got to get that out of their mind at the beginning of a season. And maybe having like an irregular season this year will help part of that. I don't know.
Yeah, like the funny thing is, like, we so often will make fun of, whether it's fans or media, the idea of like going game to game and how like, hey, we're just taking it one game at a time. And we don't want that. We want them to acknowledge the big picture nature. But in a way, maybe Nebraska is doing a horrible job at going game to game right now, because I couldn't believe some of the quotes about the Colorado game from last year in there, where they're essentially talking like fans of, this is going to be the one that we're going to prove that we belong. We're going to prove that the black shirts are back. And they let that one game affect them to the point where, I mean, even the wins that followed that game, most of them were really close games against teams that, theoretically Nebraska was a lot better than. And so I love the question you asked, John, but I don't know the answer of like, how do they overcome it? Because it seems like they're just too far in their own head at this point.
Well, and until they learn that, we keep talking about learning how to deal with success. I'm not saying you should learn to deal with failure, but you need to learn how to cope with it. You need to learn how to understand it so that it doesn't become an issue. And I hear from coaches all the time. When you go through a gut-wrenching loss, they keep saying, don't let this loss become 2. Or let this loss become 3. And it's almost like Nebraska has not figured out a way to do that, where it's, literally compartmentalize. Good or bad, whatever happens in week 1, it's out the window, on to week 2. And then whatever happens, good or bad, in week 2, after it's done, it's gone. It's out the window. And then you're on to week 3, which is, if you think about it, that's really what Tom Osborne was talking about for 25 years, was his process. That was his process, was, okay, this is this week. Next week is next week. We'll deal with that when we get there.
Forget that. You don't need to be, you just need to have an early moment that is successful. I mean, yeah, you can try and change the whole psyche and learn how to lose, but guess what? They've tried to do that a million times. I'm trying to do it as a fan. It doesn't work. The only way you solve that is by having a moment that instills that confidence, that where they believe that they finally say, we're not going down this same path again. I think that is the only way that gets
I pointed out 2012. I mean, Nebraska did that. They went off that Ohio State debacle. They went on the win streak. They won the division. I mean, Bo Pelini basically said it in the post game. He said, "We got to win the next 6." And then they went out and did it. And then what happens? They get run off the field by a 500 football team.
I don't think it was that mentality was as ingrained in 2012 as it is now, though. I mean, you've got
That's true. It's compounded because every year is this.
You got 2 coaching changes since then. You've got all of the things that have gone along with that. I mean, we weren't even at like us against the world territory yet then. That's a long time ago. It was a real different mentality then.
And along those lines, Jack, I think the thing that surprises me, and I think we mentioned this a little bit on Friday, was that this is still a problem now. Like, I figured that at certain point, like Frost specifically, because we know about his personality and we remembered what he was like at Nebraska as a player and just how confident he was when he arrived as a coach. And I thought that would seep into the players a lot quicker than it has. And yet, in a way, it seems like the losses actually are doing worse to the psyche of the program now than they did even 3 or 4 years ago under Mike Riley, or then 5 or 6 years ago under Bo Pelini.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely some truth to that. And I think he's surprised. I think he's surprised by this, and I don't think that helps anything either when you see it. So I don't know. My advice is, and you know what the truth is, if next year is played as normal, there's not really. I mean, I guess it's winning. It's beating Purdue and beating Cincinnati, but I'm not sure if that's that moment that I'm looking for.
No, if anything, people will be like, all right, well, now show me Minnesota, show me Wisconsin, show me Iowa.
You get to Ohio State or whatever. I think that's the first, the first game after a group of games that could be arguably winnable. And you get there, and then it's another blowout. And that whole beginning of the season, you feel like you got to that moment again. It almost be good to have one of these games at the very beginning of the season sometime, a huge. I don't know if Purdue fits that bill or not. Maybe it does. Maybe you go in and you beat Purdue by a couple of touchdowns, and then you get that, and that's enough to really change the mentality. But you know what the narrative is going to be, guys. If they would somehow get into that Ohio State game looking good or ranked or something like that, you're like, well, show us here. Yep. Here it is. And if it doesn't happen there, it's Groundhog Day all over again.
Isn't that part of the problem, though?
Yep.
Where
we always move the goalposts of like, this is now the big game.
The goalposts are always moving. Instead of appreciating what you have in the moment, it's always about, well, but now you need to do this. And it all stems back from this historical image that Nebraska has of itself is we are like Ohio State. We are like Michigan. And so, even when success does happen and then, here's Ohio State, here comes the benchmark, and you get blown off the field, then you get that recycle of
they're not.
Told you they weren't any good.
Yep. How are you going to talk about it if Nebraska is 7-0 or 6-1 going into Halloween on 20, presuming again the season is played regularly, and then you go into that Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota stretch after that? How will you be talking about that then?
I'm so happy you brought that up, Jack, because I was literally just looking at the schedule again just to remind myself of who they play before and who they play beginning with Ohio State. And I think that they could be 7-0 and they could win every game by double figures. And even going into Ohio State, there would still be a large portion of our audience that would say,
it's the same thing. Yeah.
And then if they lose, then it's like everyone's validated.
And it'll be here it go again. And you can already seeing it happen before your eyes. It's the easiest thing to predict in history.
But then that's part of the problem, because if you were to go into that game 7-0, the first thing you should say is, well, we're finally back in a bowl game.
Sure.
Because that's you got to look at incremental steps. And at least in that case, you'd be saying, hey, we made a bowl game. That's one good step. Now let's see if we can, show some progress against Ohio State, show some progress against, Minnesota and so
I totally
on down
agree,
the line.
John. Last year, I was asked many times, what do I think a good season would be? I said any level of improvement. Any level of improvement last year, and that would have meant primarily one more win and get to any bowl game. That, to me, would have been satisfactory improvement last year, because I know how difficult that has been to come by. So yeah, if I extend that, the same thing would be true. You get 6-1 or 7-0 in those, and you've already hit it. The rest is gravy at that point. And maybe you kind of should look at it that way. But I know there's a aim for greatness mentality that goes along with the program, where you're not going to be able to come on the air and say that. You guys get killed if you say that.
And that's the unfair thing, right? It's like the pushing back of the goalpost essentially means that the conversation we're having, they're only over a perceived hump is either if they win the national title or if they win a conference title. And so they could go 12-0. They could go into the Big Ten championship game against an undefeated, team from the other side. In this case, they played Ohio State and Penn State. So let's say 12-0 Michigan, LOL. 12 and it's like, oh, here it is. Now Nebraska can finally prove they belong. It's like, wait, they didn't prove they belong with the 12-0 start. Right. Going 12-0 in the regular season, that's not enough now. And that's the thing. It's just because of where they have been. The ultimate goal is literally winning the last game of the season, which is the last game of the season for the whole sport, and that's untenable at this point.
Josh, let me paint you this scenario. It's the Monday before Halloween. Nebraska's 6-1. They lost one of the games. Say they lost to Cincinnati or somebody. Pick one of those teams. But they're 6-1. They just came off a 13-point win against Rutgers. With Ohio State coming up.
Ooh, a 13-point win against Rutgers. I know what my take's going to be. This team sucks.
13-point win against Rutgers. And you guys, is there any chance you could come on the air or would come on the air and say, hey, there it is. It's an improvement over last year, right? The rest
I
of
would say it. I would say it. If they get 6 wins in their first 7 games, dude, they are that's way better than last year.
The rest of the way is gravy, because that's going to have to be, you almost have to have, I think, that kind of a mentality not to fall apart if things don't go well in those first couple of games.
I do wonder, because we've couched everything to if they play a season, if they play a season on time. Right. I do wonder if the specter of missing a season, not having a season, or having a very disruptive season is going to help change some of the perspective from the. In other words, it'll make people go, hey, at least we've got it. Thank God that we've got it. Or will fans immediately shift back into, their regular attitudes the moment that ball is teed up and they're playing a game again?
Great question. Like what if you start, in any kind of an abnormal way, you start in October or without any fans, or they go to spring somehow. Like the first time we see a game, that Nebraska-Purdue game, let's say that's still played in October with no fans there, or February with no fans there, and Nebraska loses. Like, will the anger be the same as the regular anger after we've been begging for football for so long?
Bob Diaco.
Welcome to Big Red Overreaction.
It's Bob Diaco.
Man, I'm just happy we had sports again. This was great. I don't care if they lost.
Well, I think the odds of it, because Damon's probably hosting the first show. He always does. The odds of Damon taking that attitude, man, I'm just glad we had football back today. I have a hard time believing that's happening.
Can you imagine? Because they get on the schedule 3 months, like, oh, I'm so happy. You're counting down. Finally, I didn't think we'd ever see this again. And then last drive of the game, Nebraska's going in, and Diaco's defense gets a pick 6 and runs it in to lose it. Well, everyone would be like, well, it was just great to see the boys out there playing. Who we got next week?
In front of no fans, in empty Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
Oh, football is
no. That will be the first take. The first take will be, man, the sellout streak is over. I can't believe this.
I'm just glad to see that Bobby Diaco really start to succeed after he left Nebraska. It's once a Husker, always a Husker.
Well, Jack, I've been wondering about that though for the last 2 months. Like after all of this, how excited we're gonna be, and just I can't wait for that first take of yeah, but Frost has got to go. I just am so excited for just a normal fire him. What are you doing with Janander? Get rid of him. He's a horrible defensive coordinator. I need that. I need that in my life again.
Can you fire anyone in a pandemic season? Will any baseball man, if they play a shortened season in baseball, they're gonna be like, man, that manager really didn't manage the pandemic rules very well.
Danny Manning got fired, so it could happen.
But that was because of non-pandemic activity predominantly. These seasons, if they go in and play baseball or football or any of these, or I don't know, did they fire NASCAR crew chiefs or pit crew chiefs? Once they get going, fire.
In these uncertain times, we're not going to fire anybody. We are sorry. You're stuck with your 500 coach.
Hey, listen, the Lakers couldn't fire anybody because they took all that money from the CARES Act, and you can't fire anybody if you want to make it a grant. So,
I guarantee you, the person that's happiest about this conversation and the possibility that coaches are unfireable, I guarantee you, Clay Helton is like, man, I got to take some notes.
I'm good.
Clay Helton is safe.
I'm sure you guys have talked about this, but people who, yes, are in that position, can you imagine the hand that the Houston Astros have been dealt? I mean, they have avoided just a summer of misery.
Mm-hmm.
They could be privately smiling deep down inside about at least some of this, because it would have been miserable. And now they'll probably play a season with no fans. Before you get fans in there, and it'll be backstory news after all that. Back page news. Sorry, I can't talk.
Got to be.
That's all right. Hey, you realize what we just accomplished here in
I'm
25 minutes?
It's pretty amazing.
We didn't mention the COVID once. Didn't
know.
talk any news, didn't talk about any hot takes. We spent 25 minutes basically on football and the unrealistic expectation of the Husker fan. We are back to normal, folks. Sound the alarm. We're back to normal.
I haven't done that in a while. It was nice.
Before we let you go, Jack, what are your thoughts on Nebraska Crossing deleting their Twitter account?
There's no part of that story that isn't stupid. I mean, I legitimately,
Thank you.
On any side of it.
It's so funny.
There's zero part of it, from the way they handled it to the critique of them to everything.
Did you get blocked before they deleted their account?
I don't think I could. That's what I was trying to find out last night.
I guess you were putting together the toilet.
I was trying to see. No, that was Saturday night. Last night I was sitting on the porch doing some work, and I was like, "Hey, I wonder if they blocked me." I clicked it, and it was like, well, "This doesn't exist." And I'm like, "What? Did I spell it wrong?" Nope, they completely deleted it. So, I don't know. But I'll tell you what. I don't know if Omaha was like this, guys. But in Lincoln, there was not a hardware store or like a garden center or anything that did not have basically every parking spot filled in the entire.
Oh, I know. It's been that way for 6 weeks.
Entire place. And so, like, if we're picking out one retailer that's open in this just giant sea of retailers, it's like I wonder if people are out and about and like just driving around and seeing and realizing how busy everything is. If that's the big critique.
If you would like, beam me in from a different time to any of the Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's that I've been to the last 6 weeks and not told me any of the backstory, I would have thought it was just a normal Saturday outside of, having to wait in line. But if you would have showed me the parking lot and the people milling about in the parking lot, I would have been like, yeah, it looks like Saturday to me.
Saturday or slightly or busier than a Saturday, even. I would have said.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's interesting. All right. Well, we'll let you get back to the serious world now because you've got a show to do later. And
I'm not doing it today. I got Monday off. We have we're finally on a rotation now, so we don't all have to do 2 shows every day. So
nice.
I'll be on Tuesday through Friday.
Wow.
Oh, we're talking
afternoon.
But they are the crew is talking to Dr. Rupp today, and you guys know he's always a really good interview. So we're going to do that at 5:35. So look for the podcast if you want to see
Radio replay
that later. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, radio replay.
I forgot which station I was on.
Yeah. All right, Jack Mitchell of our sister station KLIN. Thanks, Jack. Creighton says hi to Maga Herbie. Bye, Jack. Wow.
Bye, Jack.
This is a family feed.
I was cleaning this. Sorry, I had a little smudge there.
This is a family show.
I got it. It's good.
All right. See you later.
Bye, Jack.
Bye, Jack.
Wow. Can we get is that an FCC violation?
No, we can do whatever the hell we want on
Yeah,
this.
it's the internet, John. We can literally say any word. Well, not any word.
Well, we are still on the air.
Nobody saw what he did on the radio, though, John.
I can't believe he pulled his pants down like that. Very, very, very unbecoming.
He has a very white butt.
Very white butt. But did you notice the ring around it? Because obviously he did test the toilet without the seat.
Oh, yeah. He just sat there. Got to sit here for 4 hours just to make sure everything's good to go.
All right. We'll be back with more of Unsportsmanlike Conduct on